Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of Heading Home. Today, I'm joined by a familiar guest, Justin Towsey, and we're going to be covering the 2022 BBWAA National Baseball Hall of Fame election results, the designated hitter coming into the National League, and Juan Soto's free agency landing place in 2024. So lace up those cleats and round third for another exciting episode of Heading Home. Before we begin today's episode, let's kick it off with the baseball question of the day. Today's question is, who was the first designated hitter in baseball history? Think about it. We'll let you know the answer at the end of the show, so stick around. Justin, what's up, buddy? How you been?
Zach, good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad. It's been a while since our last endeavor together.
Yeah, just about a year, unless you count your move.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. A lot has definitely changed within that past year. And one big thing was the 2022 Hall of Fame election this year. I guess just some background info. On January 25th, 2021 or 2022, the BBWAA added its latest member to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. That member was first ballot. It was his first year on the ballot, and it was none other than David Ortiz, who received 77.9% of the vote. Throughout Big Papi's career, he racked up many accolades. He was a 10-time All-Star, 3-time World Series champ. He won the World Series MVP in 2013, and his number 34 was retired by the Boston Red Sox. This year, he will also be joined by Golden Days era committee electees Gil Hodges, Jim Cott, Minnie Minoso, and Tony Oliva, as well as early baseball era committee electees Bud Fowler and Buck O'Neill. So Towsey, is there anything that surprised you about the 2022 Hall of Fame voting results?
Hey, Zach. Well, first off, I was kind of surprised to see Ortiz be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's a pretty prestigious award and definitely a great player, but I wasn't quite sure he was that caliber. I kind of think he benefited from, the splits with all the writers being undecided on who and sort of a weak ballot. I don't know your thoughts on that.
I would agree. On the list for first ballot, or their first time on the ballot, Ortiz was one of the bigger names that stuck out. I think Teixeira, Morneau, Ryan Howard, Tim Lincecum. I'm surprised that they didn't stay on for at least another year by gaining 5% of the vote. But that's kind of my opinion. How about you?
Yeah, I definitely would have thought that Teixeira and Morneau would have stayed on. They stayed pretty consistent and had pretty good careers for a long time. I know like Howard and Lincecum had some really good years, but they kind of fell off. They had a 5-year run where, all-stars, Cy Youngs, MVPs, but they kind of fell off. And there was also some people that have been on the ballot before I thought would do a little better than they did. Maybe like Helton. Thought he would climb up a little farther. A little more out of Jeff Kent.
Yeah. Jeff Kent is always an interesting case. The past 3 years, whenever I've made like a fake ballot, I've always had him on my list. He won an MVP award. He leads the all second baseman in career home runs. Just very consistent all around. So I know you're a big Phillies guy. What were your thoughts about Curt Schilling in his last year on the ballot?
Yeah, I really think Curt Schilling's a Hall of Famer, Zach. I don't think that you should be punished for your beliefs and thoughts outside of baseball. I know they tend to punish players occasionally, but I really thought he should have been in and been in a long time ago.
I agree. Back when Mike Mussina made the Hall of Fame, I thought if Mussina gets in, then Schilling gets in. That was my thought. But it kind of sucks now that he's off the ballot. If we were talking a handful of years ago, he still would have had 5 more years of eligibility back whenever players could be on a ballot for 15 years.
Yeah, I think he kind of hurt himself when he said to just take him off after last year. But I don't think Schilling should have had to get to this point to try to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's one of the best pitchers of the 2000s. Some of his postseason performances with Arizona and Boston, I think he stacks up against a lot of people that are in the Hall of Fame and should be in there.
I agree.
I'm one of those people. I believe there's a little more to the Hall of Fame than just numbers. But right. I mean, he's got the numbers. He was a personality when he played, and that personality is probably what kept him out once he retired. But I think Curt Schilling is a baseball Hall of Famer to me.
I would agree. I 100% agree with that. Then the 2 biggest names on the ballot are no longer going to be on the ballot going forward, and that would be Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. And Bonds this year, well, both of them received their highest voting percentages for their entire time on the ballot. Bonds topped out at 66.0%, and Clemens topped out at 65.2%. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I used to be very against the steroid era players getting in, but I think you actually told me this one time. You thought that players that did not test positive should be in, and the ones that did test positive after it was implemented by MLB should be kept out. And I think that's a solid opinion. And I've done a little bit of research on this, and it's kind of funny because if you look up if Barry Bonds ever tested positive, you never find a straight answer, because he did not officially or on any record ever test positive. Right. It was lost.
Yeah.
And it was not an official MLB test. So, I mean, I understand they cheated the game, but at the same time, MLB should have stepped up back in the late 80s and 90s and shut that down before it was a problem. And, if you're not going to punish people then, how can we punish them now?
Exactly. Which brings up another interesting point, because if I remember correctly, this was A-Rod's first year on the ballot as well. And he garnered, 34.3% of the vote. He also served one of the longest suspensions in MLB history. But here's another thought. With Bonds and Clemens off the ballot, do you think A-Rod is going to eventually climb up and possibly be elected?
I think if you keep Bonds and Clemens out, how can you let Rodriguez get in? I think this needs to be at the baseball writers have set a precedent now, and I think they need to stick to it. And maybe the errors committees decide to put these players in. I just don't know how long does this punishment continue. I mean, we've been punishing Pete Rose since the 80s.
Right.
So are we going to do that with this whole era of players, even though, I mean, there's a couple players that have been linked to PEDs that are in. I know right. Ortiz was allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
I know there wasn't really any proof, and there was was it Edgar Martinez?
Is
in?
Edgar's in. Piazza.
Yeah.
Is in. No, if Bonds and Clemens don't get in my opinion, and you said it earlier, if you get suspended for PEDs, you don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I think if you follow that precedent, it makes that decision a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree. And I was thinking about this last night a little bit. If we're going to punish the players that supposedly use steroids, are we going to reward the players that didn't? Like, what about a Will Clark who was an all-star? Definitely not a Hall of Famer in my mind, but he played in the era with all these guys, the story with him and Palmeiro in college, and then how they kind of stayed linked together in Major League Baseball. We're kind of cutting out a whole generation of people here.
Yes. I mean, the same can be said about a lot of players, like Steve Garvey, first baseman for the Dodgers and Padres. Just like a couple other, Will Clark, possibly Oral Hershiser. I mean, he put up a couple good years pitching wise, and that's kind of going to lead us into our next topic, where these guys do have a second chance, and that is via the Today's Game Era Committee. I guess a little background is every November, after the conclusion of the World Series at the winter meetings, the Era Committees meet together and release their ballot for Hall of Fame inductions. And their ballot consists of 10 players. It's a 16-person committee, which is typically made up of former players, executives, managers, owners, members of the media, things along those lines. In all, the Era's committees as a whole have elected 173 members to the Hall of Fame, which include 101 MLB players, 31 executives, 22 managers, 10 umpires, and 9 Negro League players. And just like the BBWAA ballot, each player must receive 75% of the vote. So the last time the Today's Era Committee voted was in 2019, and that's when they selected Lee Smith and Harold Baines to the National Baseball Hall of Fame. There were, like I said, 16 voting members, and members typically don't return for more than 2 consecutive voting cycles. And here's a question to ponder: is how will steroid era players like Bonds, Clemens, Sosa, McGuire fare now with a reduced voting body? And here's a little snippet before giving your answer. McGuire is the only one on that list that has experienced the Today's Game era voting cycle back in 2017, when he received less than 5 votes. So do you think Bonds, Clemens, Sosa, Schilling even have a better shot with a smaller voting body?
I think Schilling's got a good shot here. I think I've noticed that the Heirs committees a lot of times tend to look at the numbers more than the social aspects of it. So I think Schilling might have a good shot with that. But I mean, there again, I feel like in 2017 they set a precedent with McGuire. But it'll also be interesting to see who's on that committee. I just did a quick search. I can't see who's on it. I don't know when they released that, but I mean, that could play a huge role because you've got turnover there, unlike the Baseball Writers Association.
Right. I guess just a little information. Some of the voting committee for 2019 consisted of Hall of Famers Roberto Alomar, Burt Blyleven, Pat Gillick, Tony La Russa, Greg Maddux, Joe Morgan, John Schuerholz, Ozzie Smith, Joe Torre. Executives Al Avila, Paul Beeston, Andy McPhail, and Jerry Reinsdorf. And then media historians Steve Hurt, Tim Kirkjian, and Claire Smith. So there may be a little bit of turnover in that voting pool, which could help.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, but I don't. I think Bonds and Clemens are probably going to be hurt by the fact that it was 1 year after they fell off the normal ballot.
Right.
I just don't think it's going to help, but
yeah,
time will tell.
Yeah, looking at the list of former players and coaches on that list. I think one possibly has a shot to get in, and that's Lou Piniella, who's been on the list in 2017, 2019, and then again in 2023.
Yeah, does Piniella have any World Series as a manager?
That's actually a good question. I believe he does. Let's just check. Baseball Reference. He won 2 World Series as a player, but then
three-time Manager of the Year.
Yeah,
he could have a shot more as from the manager side. I mean, he had a pretty decent playing career too. Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
made an All-Star team.
Yeah, and it looks like he won a World Series as a manager back with the 1990 Reds.
Okay.
Where he also had 5 ejections.
Pretty low for Piniella.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, other people possibly on that list include, like we said, McGuire, Will Clark, Joe Carter, Oral Hershiser, Davey Johnson, and George Steinbrenner. So we'll probably do an episode whenever that ballot is released and kind of see who we think is going to make it. All right, Justin, do you want to take us into our next topic for the day?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is sort of in the unknown. We hope to know by now, but the DH coming to the National League. What do you think?
So I was doing some research, and if Major League Baseball's main focus is bringing excitement back into the game, then I would agree, because people want to see offense. That's what they want to see. They don't want to see a pitcher standing up at the plate watching 3 strikes go by. They don't want to see sacrifice bunts anymore. As a baseball purist, I think you're taking a specific element out of the game, like double switches, things along those lines. You know, I feel like the hit and run was more prevalent in the National League. But after looking at some of these numbers, pitchers hit 108 last year. They struck out 51.6% of the time, and they only had 449 hits. I like, compared to, now this leads into a little bit of a history background. The American League back in 1973 voted 8-4 to approve the designated hitter position on a 3-year trial period, and it stuck. The year before that, pitchers hit 146 in 9,230 at bats. They had 1,350 hits and struck out 3,447 times. So I think if the American League recognized it back then I think the National League should say, yes, we want this. How about you?
Yeah, I've always been of the opinion that pitchers should hit. I always thought they should in both leagues. My favorite team being the Phillies, I'm kind of excited to have it for the team that they currently have. But, I mean, I do think it takes an aspect out of the game, especially from the managerial standpoint. One of the biggest things the managers would have to do is balance pinch hitters, pitchers, where they were hitting. And I think that takes a big aspect out of the game. And also, as a Phillies fan, I saw Joe Girardi manage a fantastic Yankees team in the late 2000s with the DH and, not really any questions, and win a World Series. And then I thought he lacked a little bit as the manager of the Phillies, where he kind of had some revolving doors and had to deal with pinch hitters. And pitchers hitting. So I'm kind of disappointed to see that part of the game go if this goes through with the new CBA.
Yeah, whenever that's agreed upon. I guess a little bit more information is the fact that most people don't know that the National League was close to accepting the DH position back in the 80s. So in 1980, all the National League owners got together to vote, yes, no vote, on whether they wanted to bring the designated hitter into their league, and it wouldn't go into effect until 1982. The vote ended in a 5-4 decision to not have the designated hitter. The teams that voted for the DH were the Braves, Mets, Cardinals, and Padres, and the Cubs, Reds, Dodgers, Giants, and Expos all voted against it. And you're wondering where are the Phillies, Pirates, and Astros? They were absent from that vote. And according to reports, the Pirates were supposed to side with the Phillies in whatever decision they made. So back in 1980, there could have been the designated hitter in the National League, and we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So I guess here this leads into a question for you. As a Phillies fan, who do you currently want to DH for your team?
I would have Rhys Hoskins be the DH, no questions asked. He'd never see the field again.
That's fair. That's fair.
What about you for the Pirates, Zach?
So I'm kind of torn between picking somebody on the current roster or a free agent that they could afford. If we were going with the current roster, I would probably pick Yoshi Tsutsugo, who came over to the Pirates at the end of last year. We re-signed him to a 1-year deal before the MLB lockout happened. But looking at the list of free agents, I think we would want somebody that could also play the field. So you're not strictly taking up a position for strictly a hitter. Although Pablo Sandoval does look good. He might not look good in a uniform, but I mean, he can hit the ball. That's for sure. Let's see. Let's look for a left fielder. This is going to be a lot tougher. And why don't we bring back Andrew McCutchen? He can play a little outfield. He can still hit, prolong his career, and end his career with the Pirates. It's a thought.
Yeah, I can see that. He definitely doesn't play the best outfield anymore.
Right. Plus, he would serve as a leader in the clubhouse and an established veteran for a very young Pirates team. So I think I'll go with that as my pick.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think that would maybe energize the Pittsburgh fan base a little bit too.
Yeah, put some more butts in the seats. That's for sure. I mean, he can play. He probably couldn't play left or center, but right field with the Clemens wall, short right field.
Yeah,
he can still cover some ground. He can still get on base. Especially if he's playing in the field once or twice a week and then DHing 3 or 4 times. It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good pick for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't really think about that. But there is one positive to the DH coming into the National League that I think we both agree upon.
What's that?
And that is the case with the St. Louis Cardinals and current free agent, a guy by the name of Albert Pujols. What are your thoughts on Albert returning to St. Louis?
Yeah, I'd like to see Albert go back to St. Louis. I'm not 100% sure he's the best option at DH, but I mean, he's definitely some. I think that if he sticks around, some team would pick him up, and I think it would be a storybook ending for Pujols to go back, especially if he could put together a good season. You know, maybe hit 20 home runs for them and go out that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to see that. And how far away is Pujols from 600 home runs?
That is a good question. Let's take a look. Let's see, Albert.
Well, that's not right. Wikipedia says he has 679.
Let's check Baseball Reference.
Yeah.
And he has, this would load. Oh, technology. All right, come on. He has 679 home runs.
Oh yeah, I guess he'd be getting to 700. So
yeah.
20, 21.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was 100 off there.
No, you're good. You're good.
Long week.
Yes, agreed. It's only Wednesday. Here's a little, I guess, a little bit of information from when he came over to the Dodgers from the Angels last year. He hit 254, 299 on base, 460 slugging. He had 189 at bats, 48 hits, 20 runs scored, 12 home runs, and 38 runs batted in. So he may not be the Albert of old, putting up, 40 plus homer, 100 plus RBI seasons. But I think that he could definitely help a contending team. And I think the Cardinals kind of need that. If you think about their lineup of having Pujols, Goldschmidt, Arenado as a 2-3-4 or a 3-4-5 in their lineup, that could be potent.
Yeah, I think he'd be a good fit.
Yeah.
It'll just be interesting to see because I know the Cardinals a lot of times tend to go with younger players that they developed. Granted, they did develop Pujols just 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, you're right. Like a Tommy Edman or a Chase DeJong, or a Harrison Bader type of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess they did sign Matt Holliday there.
They did
10 years ago.
Yeah.
To a contract. So they have been known to sign some free agents, and they got Arenado.
Right.
So I'd like to see it. I hope that both sides could work something out.
Yeah.
I think that's what the fans want. Is it the best baseball move? Only time could tell.
Right.
But.
Right. All right. Well, I think we're going to take a quick break and then come right back to you with a couple more final topics before we conclude this episode. So stick around and we'll be right back. All right, everyone, we're back after a short break to cover our final topic of the night. And this topic became quite the headlines a few weeks ago when Jeff Passan tweeted out on February 16th, 2022, Juan Soto turned down a 13-year, $350 million contract from the Washington Nationals before the lockout. That's a lot of money. Soto was quoted saying, "Yes, they made me an offer a few months ago before the lockout. But right now, my agents and I think the best option is to go year by year and wait for free agency. My agent, Scott Boras, has control over the situation. Now, if you're a baseball fan, you know Scott Boras's name. He has signed many big name free agents to absurd deals just within the past 3 seasons. I mean, to name a couple, before the lockout happened this year, Max Scherzer signed a 3-year, $130 million deal with the Mets. Marcus Semien, a 7-year deal worth $175 million with the Rangers. Garrett Cole back in 2019 signed a 9-year, $324 million deal with the Yankees. Bryce Harper signed a 13-year, $330 million deal with the Phillies, and Corey Seager signed a 10-year, $325 million deal with the Rangers. Do you have any thoughts on that, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, your question there, is he going to be the first $400 million man? I think there's a great shot at that. You mentioned Bryce Harper and Corey Seager with those big deals. I mean, just to show some growth, Harper's average annual value is $25.38 million to Seager's $32.5.
Oh boy,
just over 2 years. So I mean, you give another 2 years to Soto. Are we going to jump another $7 million in average annual value?
Right.
So I think that's up to how long Soto wants to sign for.
Right.
But I mean, also looking at that for length, Seager was 27 when he signed his deal. Harper was 26. Soto's only going to be 24 in 2024.
Yeah.
So I definitely think there is a great shot at him getting that big contract,
right,
if he wants that length of time. And I also think if he's looking at it from a money standpoint, waiting till 2024 is definitely going to get him the most bang for his buck, barring 2 down years or any injury.
Right. The ultimate bet on yourself move right here. And
Yep.
I think if he keeps it up, I saw the other day, if you were to average his numbers out over a 162 game season, he would hit 301 with a 432 on base and a 550 slugging, score 118 runs, 169 hits, 34 homers, 109 RBIs, and a 160 OPS plus. So if he can keep putting those numbers up, there's no doubt in my mind that he would eclipse 400 million.
Yeah, I think when you look at those average annual values, it's also important to realize Harper had an MVP under his belt whenever he signed that contract, and Seager does not. I mean,
Right.
He's got a World Series MVP, but
yeah.
Now, granted, he does play a more premium position.
That's true. That's true. In Harper's case, it's paid out because he won MVP last year with the Phillies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I could see Juan Soto kind of playing out in Bryce Harper type way. Probably not to the Phillies, but
right. Having both of them in the same outfield.
If we can get the money, okay.
Right. I guess looking into it a little bit further, it would have been the 3rd highest contract extension in Major League Baseball history, following Mike Trout's 10-year, $360 million extension from the Angels and Mookie Betts' 12-year, $365 million extension from the Dodgers. So I guess this leads us into a question we both asked each other is, in 2024, what 3 teams do we believe are going to be in the race for Juan Soto? And if you want to kick off, you are more than welcome to.
All right. I think one important thing to realize with this question is it is a very tough question to answer because we have no idea where these teams are going to be in 2 years. And that's a lot of money for a team to shell out. I feel like I don't even necessarily think the Nationals are a big market team, but for them to even offer that kind of contract, I feel like that's probably just about maxed out for them, unless dynamic change over the next couple of years, which that's always possible. I mean, the Nationals have only been around for less than 20 years, so they could still definitely boom or bust from a fan base side of things. but I also kind of kept the Nationals out of my 3 teams because I think the team you play for is always in play. The team that
Gotcha.
drafted you, especially when you won a World Series there.
Right.
So I debated between 4 teams, but I think for a contract of that size, it would have to come from the Yankees, the Dodgers, or the Cubs.
Okay. Okay. So you said the Dodgers. Do you have, I guess, any qualms about him landing there, especially with Mookie Betts in their outfield?
I think you could slide one of them to left field. I mean, they're both superb athletes. Betts is probably a better athlete than Soto,
Mhm.
so I think it would be no problem to slide one of those guys around.
Okay.
And I think that with the Dodgers, they're going to start to kind of kick some of their payroll a little bit. They're going to lose. Who did I say they were going to lose? We were talking about. Oh, they lost Seager. They lost all that money.
Yep.
I'm not sure when Trey Turner's a free agent. Kershaw is probably going to be thinking about retiring. So I think they could
Right.
have the flexibility for a player like that in 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's a good pick. The other intriguing pick I thought for you was the Chicago Cubs. Do you have any insight into that pick for you?
I kind of went with the Cubs, so I went between the Red Sox and the Cubs. I just can't see the Red Sox shelling out that kind of money.
Mhm.
But the Cubs, they're in a big market. They just unloaded all their payroll this year, so if they start to rebuild around their young talent, in 2 years they might be looking for that big piece to try to make another run at the World Series. And I definitely think they could afford something like that if they're running off homegrown talent at that time. So that's what I was thinking with them.
Yeah, definitely very intriguing and something to think about. I would agree.
What were your picks, Zach? I'm curious where you thought he was going to go because I had some trouble with this question. I really wasn't too sure. That far out, it's just so hard.
It is. It's hard to look into that crystal ball and see where people are going to end up. And I think that's the fun part of these little questions. We get to kind of play GM a little bit. But my 3 teams are the Washington Nationals, the New York Yankees, and I'm a little hesitant on this last one, but I think I'm still going to stick with it. The Miami Marlins as a surprise team.
So let's go to the Yankees since we both picked them.
Mm-hmm.
My reasoning for the Yankees was pretty straightforward. They always spend money on the best players. So I'm curious what you thought, if that was your thought process, or if you see them playing a little more strategic of a game.
So, in my mind, they do have the money to spend. They've always had the money to spend. That's why they're called the Evil Empire. They can go out and buy whoever they want, from Reggie Jackson to A-Rod to whoever, Garrett Cole in a more recent time. But that wasn't the sole basis of my decision. Aaron Judge is going to be a free agent soon. And if the Yankees decide to sign him for a 2-year deal, even if they even decide to sign him, that's the bigger question. If they don't sign him, who's going to play right field for him? And I think with Soto's bat in the Yankee lineup, as well as a short porch in Yankee Stadium, I think it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, I agree. He would definitely be a good fit in that ballpark.
Plus, he wouldn't have to shave.
I don't know if he can grow facial hair.
Yeah, right.
It took me till 25, and it's still not very good.
Well, yeah, I'll agree. I still got a year up on you. Oh, man. But
So what about the Marlins? I was surprised to hear you pick that one. It crossed my mind briefly just because of their talent and their roster, but just don't see the front office.
Right. I wanted to change my mind at the last minute, especially after the news this week with Derek Jeter stepping down as CEO. His reasoning along the lines of the front office basically doesn't have a winning mentality, and we all know Jeter, he is a winner no matter what he does. He turned the Marlins around and they made the playoffs in the 2020 COVID shortened season. But they just have so much young talent on the team, and even more in their farm system, that around that time, I think we could be talking about the Miami Marlins, finishing second, making the playoffs by 2024. And I think they need that superstar to get them over that hump to win the division and go deep in the playoffs.
I definitely agree with what you're saying on that front. I think from a personnel standpoint, would definitely make sense for the Marlins.
Right.
We should have covered the Derek Jeter stepping down, because I thought that it was very interesting timing with the CBA and everything.
Right.
I feel like there was more to that, but we won't go there. I'll sound like a conspiracy theorist.
Save that for another episode. I was listening to a podcast the other day saying how funny would it be if Derek Jeter showed up to the meetings in full uniform after stepping down, fighting for the player's side. But we'll never know. He knows. We can debate and talk about it.
Exactly. Good content.
Yes. So is there anything else you want to cover Juan Soto related?
No, I think that's just a tough one to answer, and we'll see where it goes. We'll probably be, I'm sure, with him turning down that contract, we'll be talking about it until 2024.
Yeah, agreed. It'd be fun to see. He did leave fans with a little bit of a teaser at the end of an interview that said, "Anyway, I still think of Washington as the place where I would like to spend the rest of my career. So we will see." And that we will. But now I think it's time for the answer to the baseball question of the day. The question was, who was the first DH in baseball history? Towsey, do you have any guesses?
I do not. I think I saw it a couple days ago, and it was a name I didn't recognize. So it has slipped my mind, and I felt like I was cheating if I Googled.
See, an honest person. Accidentally sent him the question, and he could have came off as this intelligent baseball historian. And
yeah, I like how you scribbled it out on the handwritten one, though.
I did. So the answer to that question is Ron Blomberg, Blomberg, Blomberg. Anyway, he played for the New York Yankees, and the first game with the designated hitter was on April 6th, 1973. And what a fitting name for Mr. Ron, we'll call him, because his nickname is Boomer. So having a DH named Boomer on opening day for the Yankees, I can't think of a better way to start the year. So Justin, before we wrap this up, is there anything else that you want to say, talk about? Anything? The floor is yours.
Yeah, not to leave us on a bad note, but I mean, maybe a brief thought on the lockout. I know I've kind of thought it's pretty unfortunate, and I feel like with that deadline on Monday, they should have reached an agreement. And, I think it's unacceptable from both sides to reach that point. They have to cancel games because the players are going to want to get paid and the owners are going to want to make money. So they're going to agree on something eventually. The only ones they're punishing right now are the fans.
Yeah, I agree.
So, if any owners or players watch this, get it together.
Please. Please. I think the real winners, though, in all of this are the minor leagues. To be honest, they're going on status quo. Opening day, April 5th for AAA. So go AAA baseball, AA, high and low A, even college. Go to a college game. They're cheap. There's usually decent play. And yeah, I mean, it's baseball.
Yeah, but that's a very good outlook on it, Zach. One I hadn't quite thought of myself, but definitely could be a positive out of a bad situation.
Right. I think one big thing that I have enjoyed, if you haven't listened to them, it's the guys over at John Boy Media and Talking Baseball. This morning, I watched game 1 of their, it's their $10,000 blitz ball tournament. So if you want to, I guess, be entertained by some entertaining blitzball games, tune in. It's pretty interesting. There's 8 teams in the tournament, double elimination. The teams are We Got Ice, McFlurry Power, Shea Station, Forgotten Rotten, Team Baggage, Southpaws, Average Joe Randoms, and MLW Snakes. That's all I got.
All right, Zach. Well, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure as always.
Yeah, not a problem. I feel like we're going to be doing this a lot more. Definitely a lot more. So that will do it for this episode of Heading Home. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to get all of your baseball content. Make sure you follow along with our blog as well, as we're posting new content weekly, and that link can be found in the description. Also, make sure you share us with all of your other baseball fans in your life. And as always, be safe, God bless, and play ball. See you, Justin.
Hey, Zach.
Sit down, take a rain check, I'm feeling good. I ain't searching for something to get me in the mood.